Well, I'm going to ask you something that concerns me. It seems like the Republican Party has internalized the big lie, where it's almost become a litmus test for candidates, even if it doesn't need to be. And the classic example is someone like Josh Mendell, who's running for Senate in Ohio, who is the front runner, and JD Vance, and these people are just going off the deep end. And so I guess what worries me is that this really is a threat to democracy, because the table's being set for being much more in a better position to overturn the 24 election. Someone like who's a very conscientious Trump supporter like you, doesn't this concern you? And people like you, what are you going to do about it? Because you're the people that can best get people to listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very valid question, Dave. And it's strange that I'm answering your question. The tables are turned. But basically, I feel that when we're looking at the case of Josh Mendell, for example, he made the statement that Ohio, the margin for Trump would have been even much higher than it actually was. Therefore, we need to have an audit to increase Trump's margin. I just think that's an unforced error. He doesn't need to be talking about that specific race in Ohio as it relates to a determinative margin to go in either direction. That's something he doesn't need to do. And then as it relates to just being backward looking, I mean, Trump himself said he left nothing on the field when it came to his legal challenges. I covered a lot of them as a journalist. There were a lot of frustrating things that Democrats and unelected bureaucrats did that were, in my view, unconstitutional, because the Constitution says it's the legislature that is supposed to make changes, not unelected bureaucrats at a lot of these state level election committees and the like. So I think the more Republicans focus on the legal questions, I think a lot of these ballot integrity laws and proposals are right on the money. That's what we should be focused on. We should really be focused on the future. So I have a problem when people are so backward looking even though I disagreed that a lot of the rulings had to do with standing rather than actual substance. And I found that frustrating, because it was, you're damned if you do before the election, you're damned if you don't with the lawsuits. But I'm sure we'll talk about this more. We got to go to our next topic.
Well, let me just ask you one question. And that is, you do agree that even though there were irregularities, there was nothing big enough that would have affected the election, right?
No, I definitely believe that Trump lost the election. That I think that there were a lot of changes. As it stood, Trump lost the election. I do think that there were lots of very questionable changes that were made. And I think it's unfortunate that the legal challenges were not brought sooner. I know that a lot of the Republicans, I think, were asleep at the wheel by allowing these things to happen. And the coronavirus was used to cover a multitude of sins. And I think that's really sad, especially now that we're learning more and more about the coronavirus, how it appears based on all the evidence. And now even Anthony Fauci's reversing his tune and saying that it looks like this was created by humans, that it was created, manufactured in part, most likely by you and me, taxpayer money, U.S. taxpayer money, grants flowing over to this research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I just find this profoundly disturbing on all levels, that this was sort of the impetus to make a lot of changes that I believe were unconstitutional. So whether these changes were determinative, the way it shaked out at the end, Trump lost. But I think you can't operate in a alternative universe.